I'm Carrie Mercer of Eva Seraphine Studios. I'm a former military broadcaster and survivor of domestic violence and sexual assault. I created Honest Conversations as a way for incredible men and women to tell their stories in their voice. It may be raw, unscripted, and off the cuff, but it's candid, open, and honest, the way things should be. And welcome to Honest Conversations, Haley.
Thanks.
I'm so happy to have you here, and you're my second guest.
Yay! I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, so thank you for coming to me and suggesting this topic, because this is very near and dear to my heart as someone who struggles with chronic illness and disability that people don't necessarily see.
Yeah, it's one of those hard to talk about, but even harder to live with things. And I think if we talk about it more and we're super open about it, it becomes less of I have to live with this alone, I have to deal with this alone, and more people know how to offer support, or your family knows what to say and what not to say, things like that.
Do you call it an invisible disability?
Yeah, invisible illness, invisible disability. So on the outside it looks like there's nothing wrong with you, and that everybody sees me and I'm young and I'm thin because I'm sick, but they're like, oh, you're fine, and I'm not.
Right. How many times have you heard that one?
Every person who has ever met me, and then I get close enough to them, or it becomes an unavoidable thing, then I'm like, hey, I'm chronically sick. And they're like, you don't look sick. And I'm like, I don't think that's the compliment you think it is.
Right, it's not.
Yeah, invalidating me right away is not the vibe I'm going for, and then.
Yeah, it almost feels like when people say that to you, that you don't feel seen. And as much as that, and trying to explain that to somebody too, when they, like you said, it's not the compliment that they think it is.
No, it's really not. It's incredibly invalidating. And then you feel like you have to explain yourself, and then it becomes like this very long conversation, and then the other person gets uncomfortable. They're like, actually, I didn't want to hear about it anyway. Well,
right,
you started this, so.
Yeah. I've had the other side of that conversation where they say, well, you look fine. And then you go into the laundry list of issues because you feel like you have to explain yourself, and then you sound like a victim.
And then other people will paint you out, and they'll be like, why do you play that up so much? Or why do you let that I hear that a lot. Oh, but you're so young. Why do you let that consume your life? You should just get out and do things. If I could get out and do things, I would have done it. I would be out there doing things, and I can't. So
does that make you feel, and I'm asking because sometimes I feel like it does for me too. Does it, when you kind of meet that resistance from people, does it make you feel less like wanting to be around people?
It really depends on the people. If they're family and friends and loved ones, I'll make every effort I can to get them to understand. I want them to understand what my life is like. But if it's coworkers and random people, I'm like, okay, I guess I don't want you in my life anyway then.
Yeah. Going back to explaining yourself.
Yeah.
I got to a point where I just stopped trying to explain myself. And maybe that's with age or getting very, very, very tired of having to explain myself to people. But have you gotten to that point where you just push through and just stop stop feeling like you had to explain yourself to people because most people don't understand anyway, even when you try to explain yourself?
I want to be in that mindset, but I think I haven't gotten there yet, because one of the things I have a hard time with is if I feel like people can't understand me, they won't want to be around me. They won't want to be my friend. Professionally, they won't put me up for promotions and stuff unless they understand why I'm not there. So I try to explain it to everybody.
What is the biggest thing that you feel people need to understand? I think that this is a good place for, because it can broadcast to a lot of people. What do you think that people need to understand? Especially because I too started with chronic illness at a young age. And we are in a very different place now than we even were back then.
Yeah.
What do you think people need to understand, especially with someone so young dealing with chronic illness? What do you want people to understand?
I want people to understand that, like, yes, I want to go out and do these things, and I want to experience the life of being young and everything. I do want that for myself, but I can't. And that doesn't make me a bad person that I can't go to the party. It doesn't make me a bad person or a lazy person that I can't go on this group hike that everybody wants to go up a mountain and I'm like unable. I can't get out and socialize all the time, but it doesn't mean that I don't want to be there, you know? And that if I could, I would. But I think I struggle with that a lot with people. They just immediately assume that, oh, it's lazy. Oh, she just doesn't want to do it anyway. Because if she wanted to, she would, is a lot of big thing from ableist people, and trying to make people understand that, no, I can't.
The fact that, like, when you get to the point that people have put you in that place where you feel down on yourself because you can't, you physically can't, you know, and they've put you in a position where you start to get down on yourself about that. How do you get yourself out of it?
I'm still learning that. I'm still making peace with the fact that there are things that I can't do no matter how hard I try, or how hard I want to. I think it really comes back to, I'm very lucky to have the support network that I do. My parents, my family. I have a really great partner and he's very understanding. My friends, because my friends have seen me at the absolute worst, and they've taken care of me. So knowing that, like, you know, other people may say these things, but I go home to people that I love, and I know that they love me back. And no matter how sick I am or how good of a day I'm having, they'll always be there. And for that, no one else matters.
Yeah, I used to be, I think when I was younger and I used to hear, but you look fine and stuff like that, it used to actually cause me to hide things more and develop that, you know, pretend that I was fine because I was tired of hearing it. And then one day I just stopped giving a shit.
I think pretending that everything is fine and that, like, oh, I'm great, was only hurting me, because I would push myself to do these things and then wind up so sick. And then,
yeah, you crash. You get
yeah,
home and you get sicker. You lay in bed longer, and then I think the depression is worse because you're harder on yourself. And I just stopped caring what other people thought. And, you know, if I was having a bad day, or I could barely walk, or I just started saying it, and if people made comments about it, I'd say, tough shit. I don't care. Because I realized that I wasn't going to be able to change anybody's opinions about it. And I realized that once I stopped caring and I kind of not accepted it, but kind of rolled with it, you know what I mean? Less people started to care too. I don't want to say I made a joke about it, but it kind of became part of who I was. And
yeah, that's definitely one of the things. Like, it does, like it or not, it is a part of who you are. So, and it's never going to go away. So you have to embrace it. And I'm still working on that. And then, yeah, sometimes you get to the point where it's like, well, it's a lot easier to make this incredibly dark joke that maybe one person's going to laugh at. I think it's hilarious because I have to laugh or I'm going to start crying. So,
yeah, I have realized in the last few years, and especially being around the people I've been with recently, dark humor, especially in situations like this or in anything like that, kind of helps in those situations.
It does help. And then other people look at you like you're insane, or no one laughs. And then, or somebody says, "Are you okay?" And you're like, "Yeah, I'm great. Why'd you ask?" Because it's just a part of, again, it's a part of all of it.
it's how you cope. It's I mean, if you can't make light of it yourself, you end up in a dark place.
Mhm.
I mean, I think I was my sickest when I was beating myself up about the fact that I was sick because I
Um,
couldn't do the things that people my age could do.
so I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and dysautonomia and mast cell activation syndrome. They always come together. Well, not always. They usually come together as a trifecta. But long story short, my bones dislocate like all the time.
Mhm.
And for a while, I didn't want to face what that meant for me. So I would push myself super duper hard, and then it would just ruin my day. And then sometimes my bones would get like permanently dislocated, and I'd have to go to the hospital. But like, I think something that's really hard is, especially being young, accepting that things aren't actually all that great.
And you've had this your whole life, right?
It is. They're all three genetic. And when you're a kid, it's very hard to diagnose because they'll dismiss it as growing pains and, oh, you're just getting older. Um, I'm in my late 20s now and I haven't gotten better. So, you know what I mean?
Mhm. Um, Now you said it comes as a trifecta. What are the other two? Just because I don't know
Yeah.
everything about it.
So,
What are the other two?
without getting sciencey about it,
Yeah.
dysautonomia is like, so my resting heart rate is real close to 100 and it'll never dip below that. It's a heart thing. Um, you're always a racing heart. When you stand up, you get really dizzy, and sometimes you just pass out. It's rough. And then mast cell, your body has a really inappropriate response to stress in the environment, and it sends you into anaphylaxis, like for no reason, multiple.
Really?
Yeah, it's great.
So like the same thing as eating a peanut when you're allergic to it.
Yeah, and then like you have really hard. Well, a symptom of all three of them is you have a really hard time temperature regulating, and sometimes like you're too hot and you can't change that, and then your heart rate freaks out, and then you pass out,
I
or you
remember
get too
the
cold.
studio. Yeah, you were really cold at the studio.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember that.
Mhm.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
you
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 were like
can't temperature
super.
regulate.
Yeah, and I think it was summertime when you were
Yeah,
there.
it was.
hmm So getting to that point, are you able to work?
I so I used to be a veterinary technician and I really loved it, but I couldn't. So yeah, that was the passion job that I had. Um, Obviously, with all three of those things, I can't go back to it.
Mhm.
So as long as it's like a desk job, I
Mhm.
I can do it. It doesn't leave me exhausted and in pain at the end of the day. Um, it's hard to accept that I can't do the thing that I did find that I was passionate about.
Mhm.
Because I really can't come up with a single person that's passionate about a desk job. I can't. Um,
Yeah. Accountants maybe, but are they
Maybe
passionate?
passionate about the paycheck, but like
Yeah,
the work, like
exactly.
this is not very stimulating, but it is literally the only work I can do.
Mhm.
Or and that it makes it hard being in the job market too, like looking for work because you have to find a very specific, like it is only a desk job, it'll only ever be a desk job, I'll never, like, you know how like jobs, I mean job searchers are very ableist in general because every job has a description. It's like you have to lift 30 pounds. I can't lift
Yeah.
30 pounds, my arms will literally break off my body, like
Mhm.
I can't. um and it's ableism. Because even my current job description says I have to be able to lift 50 pounds, and I've never lifted anything at that job. So,
Oh, really?
mhm.
Are you, able to or do you disclose that you struggle with these chronic illnesses when you or do you not because you're afraid that you won't get hired?
I keep really quiet about it until I hit my 90th day.
Okay.
Because it's harder, apparently, it's harder to fire you after 90 days because that's like your eval period and everything. Um, so, yeah, day 90 or day 91, I'm like, by the way, here's my disability accommodations and everything that I will absolutely need for this job.
Okay.
And I know I'm not the only disabled person who does that because, yeah, the fear of like, wow, I don't want to deal with that as an employer at all. We're just going to fire you, or we're not going to hire you.
So I haven't worked outside of myself or the VA system since many, many years. So is that an issue with disability and struggling to like, what's the word? I can't think of the word today. Or is that an issue when you're trying to get hired and they can actually not hire you because of your disabilities?
So technically, that's incredibly illegal.
That's what I thought.
Oh yeah, it's really illegal, but employers do it anyway. They do it all the time. Like those personality tests that are popping up now, before you'll ever get an interview, it's a wild process. They're like, oh,
Really?
here's a personality test to see if you'll fit into our company culture. And it's to weed out neurodivergence.
Really?
Yeah, because they want like you're going to be a workhorse and a yes man forever. And like all of the answers could technically be right answers. They're very weird, but the ultimate goal is to weed out neurodivergence.
Which are highly intelligent people.
Yeah, it's they're very strange. But no, getting hired is always a hard time for me. Because like, so my current office, they keep it freezing cold in there, and I sit at my desk shivering with a heat pad. And I feel like an accommodation to be like, can I get a space heater or something? But I work in the environment where that kind of thing would be like, I would disclose a disability or something. In the work culture that place creates, they'd be like, actually, you can pack your things and leave. Or they would find a way to push me out. And that's not uncommon.
Yeah. And are there any repercussions or anything? I mean, you obviously have a legitimate chronic illness and disability. Like,
and that's another thing. Like the mental climb to get your diagnosis.
oh yeah.
To get a diagnosis, I think people, when I officially got my diagnosis, it was a lot of, oh, I'm so sorry, or it was either I'm so sorry or why are you chasing this so hard? Because I want confirmation of what's wrong with me. This has been wrong with me since the start, so I'm not that worked up about it. But also coming with a diagnosis, then you can be legally protected, because you can't just go into anywhere and be like, I have a disability, and then like you're protected. That's not how that works. You need the official everything. And that's assuming you find a doctor who believes you, because that's always a thing. And then they send you for testing. And then you have to be able to take time off in life to do all those things. And you have to be able to afford it. And that's like a whole other thing. But the day I got my diagnosis, I cried. And everybody was like, why are you crying? Like, you knew already. And it was a relief cry. It was a validation cry. And it was like this opens so many doors to make life easier for me.
I did the same thing. I literally, the day I got my letter from the VA when they acknowledged after 15 years that something was wrong, when I kept saying I can feel it.
Yeah.
And they acknowledged it. I literally collapsed in my yard reading my letter. My kids thought something was wrong, because I was sobbing, because I had gone all these years. I wasn't able to work because I was so sick. I was a single mom with 3 kids. I could barely, if I did try to get a job, it was, I could barely work. And so, yeah, it's that being, finding that moment where somebody finally validates that, when something's wrong with you. I mean, the same thing happened when I found out that I had an adrenal disorder, and I was like convulsing in the middle of, baseball fields and a church and all these things. And the doctors kept telling me it was in my head, until I went to one doctor who found out that because I had been through fight or flight for so long, that I had so little cortisol in my system that if I had waited any longer, I could have died.
Yeah. And do you know that like medical saying? I think it was actually originates from the University of Maryland Medical Center. But like it's when you think of horses, or when you think of hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras. It's a thing that they say in medicine to like, there are common diagnoses. Look at that first, like, because the rare diagnosis, well, it's rare. Why would you be looking at that? But that doesn't mean that they're unicorns. Like zebras, they exist. They're there. While it may not be as common as horses, they're there. But it gets brushed off, or like doctors won't even test for it or something.
Yeah.
Which is why the zebra stripes are on like the awareness pin for Ehlers-Danlos.
Oh,
The community really rallies around that quote and how it's harmful.
because nobody would ever think to look for it.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many people that suffer with chronic illnesses, the story is so the same.
It's the same thing, different names, different places, but it's all the same in the fact that like, while we've had progress in the disability community, the progress we've hit today should have happened well before I was even born. Like,
you have to advocate for yourself to even get the diagnosis, and it's not because you want the diagnosis. Nobody wants to be sick. And that's the other issue too. Like you were going back and saying earlier, nobody's chasing this because this is what they want. They just want someone to acknowledge that there's something wrong. Right. Not that they want something to be wrong, but they feel that there's something wrong and someone needs to acknowledge it so maybe it can be fixed. Because, I mean, if it can be fixed, then that would be fabulous. But in some cases, like mine, they waited so long
that it got worse.
It can't be fixed. In your case, unfortunately, I don't know that they could ever fix that.
But I can get access to the tools to symptom manage better than I would have if I didn't have the diagnosis.
Right. And so, just being able to get to the point where somebody can acknowledge it, you can start to feel better or feel like manage it, or in a way where you can feel some kind of, feel better than you did before. And, like you had said earlier, people accuse people of chasing that diagnosis. It's not because anybody wants it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think like the diagnosis was something for me to be celebrated. It was a sigh of relief.
Right.
But I'd finally gotten here. And it's also, it's like you said, very validating.
Mm-hmm.
And then having a name to put to the thing that's definitely wrong with you helps you communicate it better, whether it be to just other people or your other medical providers.
Or even to process it in your own head.
Yeah, because once you realize that, like, oh God, I have the diagnosis, and now people believe me, and I also kind of believe myself that, like, because people will tell you you're being dramatic about it for so long that you start to believe it yourself, and you're like, I don't know, am I being dramatic? And then, no, I was not. Everybody, including myself, was wrong. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then it becomes a vicious cycle in your head too, because there's something wrong. You try to figure it out. You go to people who tell you it's all in your head. Then you start to believe it's in your head, but it's not. And then it just becomes this like, vicious cycle where you start to doubt yourself, like you said. And then there's that one person that believes you and you're able to process the whole thing. But then you have other people that might, it's like it's a constant, it's hard when you have any disability at all. And I'm not saying one disability is worse than the other. Yeah, it is really hard when they're invisible.
Yeah. And
because they'll believe someone if they're missing an arm, because if you say I'm missing an arm, oh yeah, I see that.
One thing that I get a lot of weird and dirty looks for. So sometimes, like, I went to France a couple years ago, and it was that big museum that I can't remember the name of.
The Louvre.
That's it. I got a lot of dirty looks, like from when I left the airport in the US to when I got to the one in France and all, because I was using a wheelchair, like the ones that can just be provided to you. And I would get so many dirty looks and stares because I'm perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have gotten around without it. I should use mobility aids more often. I really should. But it's like, can I just go home and ice my legs versus argue with every person who gives me a dirty look? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just, again, it's that, is it going to be more socially exhausting than taking a nap later?
But how does it affect the rest of your life if they give you a dirty look other than letting them just affect you?
I'm working on that. And I have to remind myself all the time.
I had to do the same thing because really it's a them problem.
It is. And some days I'm a little bit braver about it. And it's usually the days that I have my friends with me, because no one does it when you're with other people. But when you're alone, it's more prevalent and they're way more likely to do it. And then I freeze up and I'm like, why are you even talking to me? I don't know you.
Right.
And it shouldn't ruin my day, but it does. It just does.
Oh yeah. And I'm still not 100% with it either. I let people ruin my day all the time. But it is really a them problem because one, they don't know, they don't understand, and they need to mind their own business because they really don't know. And they're probably the same people that go and do stuff like that for the wrong reasons. And so they're judging you because they themselves might do it. So, they have no reason to judge anybody. But yeah,
I had a lady, she was old too. It was a giant the grocery store parking lot, and I pulled in to the handicap parking spot. I have a placard. It says permanent and everything on it. Anyway, I have the handicap placard and I get out of my car and she just starts filming me, and she goes with her cell phone. She's like, I'm going to put this on Facebook. And this woman does not know me. I've literally never met her in my life. And she's like, I'm going to put this on Facebook. Of course you are, because you're old. But she was like, because you're faking it and everybody needs to see how these fakers are getting away with it. And I'm like, just trying to go get groceries. But that's not the first time with a camera. But the audacity of some people to come up to you and just hassle you, sometimes it makes me scared to use my aids. One dude came and beat his fist down on the trunk of my car, and he goes, what do you think you're doing? And I'm like, parking. Some people are too passionate about being ableist.
Yeah, that's a problem. That people feel that they need to determine how disabled you are.
Right? And I'm like, what happened to you in life that made you like this? Because that is somebody has enabled you for too long to be acting like that.
Yeah.
One back to the anxiety thing from that, but just in general, I have a lot of relationship anxiety, and I don't particularly love admitting that, but I'm not gonna pretend I don't. I have so my partner and my friends, they're all able to do things like normal people, and I've had to reject a lot of invites, or we've had to stop going to places, or had to go home early from places. And those people love you, right? They love you very much. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you can see their disappointment on their face, kind of situation.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's it makes bad. And I've lost friends and I've lost relationships to that of nope, we gotten too sick, bye. And then you live with that, and it's oh man, the people that care about me, I want to be there with them. Or sometimes I guess it's the fear that they'll leave me because I'm getting too sick. Because the thing about the Ehlers-Danlos is it gets worse as you age. And it's oh God, if you guys are making frowny faces at me right now, you're going to be making more frowny faces as I get worse in the next few years or however long this is going to go. Because I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. The anxiety that goes along with that, because you don't know, how much people will
Right? Everybody
not
says,
put up with it, but you know what I mean.
yeah. And everybody says, like, oh, we're here for you. Like, that only really goes so far. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no, I definitely know. I do.
Like, the understanding only goes so far. And then people stop inviting you places because they don't, to say they don't want to deal with you is not the words I'm looking for, I don't think. But like,
Right. Yeah, I said the same thing, but I like put up with, but yeah, I know it. I know what words we're trying to say, but I
yeah,
can't think of it. Yeah, no, that's like with me. I have PTSD and anxiety
me
and
too.
depression.
I have
Yeah.
PTSD.
So trying to explain to people why I don't want to go out because I have social anxiety, or I have had a triggering day, which I've told you before. I hate the word triggering, but
But that's the word we're
but
using because
it
that's
is the
it.
word. And people invite me out, and I just say I don't want to, and they say why, and I go because I don't want to, because I can't even explain why I don't want to. I've had people stop asking me to go places for the same, for that reason, because I've been told too, I look fine, but my PTSD for a while actually caused me to have mild agoraphobia. So I wouldn't leave my house. I still get it sometimes. It's to the point where if I get so stressed or so anxious, or I've had something happen that might put me in, one of those moments, I can't leave the house. I can't talk to people. I can't do anything. Um, so I used to worry about that. And I ended up becoming very comfortable with having to be alone, because for a while I was alone because I lost a lot of relationships over that.
Yeah. It's something that, like, I don't know if I'll ever make peace is the word I'm looking for, I guess,
Yeah.
with the relationships that I've lost because of being disabled. Um, because it's like one of those things, there's nothing, it's no one's fault
Mm-hmm.
that I'm in the situation that I'm in, but it
Mm-hmm.
sure sucks when people distinctly leave you because of it.
So I have a family member who had a traumatic brain injury, and we were all in a support group. And I was young. I was a young teenager, but the one thing I remember was a lot of the guys that were in the group, their wives left them after, as if it was their fault, because they didn't want to deal with it. They couldn't handle it.
That was something somebody that I loved very much would say. I can't handle this. I can't handle you being the way you are whenever I would have a flare up or something. And I'm like, really, you can't handle it? You're fine. I'm the one in the wheelchair. I'm the one in the hospital bed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm the one who just passed out on the floor and you can't handle it. Okay.
Yeah, there are things that you cannot control that, I mean, it's not your fault. None of it is your fault. Even people with PTSD, when they are being triggered and they are having complete PTSD meltdowns, that is not their fault. You know, but anybody who has a chronic illness, any disability, anything like that, that is not their fault. And you know, the people that I was talking about in that support group with the traumatic brain injuries, it was heartbreaking to see how many people were alone, because some of them, they had frontal lobe damage. Yes, that does affect mood and different things like that, but it was not their fault that they became what they were, and they were abandoned because of their disability. And it is amazing how often that does happen.
I was in
And so that is a valid fear that you have, and it's, anxiety, which,
yeah. I was in an airport once, waiting with all the other disabled or sick people in wheelchairs because, they put you on the plane first.
Yeah.
And the other person was embarrassed to be with me so much that they went and sat in a different terminal, the one across from like where ours was, because they didn't want to be seen with me because it made them uncomfortable.
Why?
Still don't have an answer to that, but I will never forget that they told me that was the reason, because I said later, I was like, oh, why'd you sit all the way over there? And like it was nothing. They're like, oh, because I was embarrassed of you. Okay. I'm gonna ruminate on that for the rest of my life
You
at some
looked
point
too
or another.
healthy.
Yeah.
And people have their own views on what people should be in whatever group they're in. If you're disabled, you should look this way. If you're gay, you should be this way. If you're, whatever group you're in, you should be whatever they think you should be in. And I think that's part of the reason why people end up judging people so harshly. It's because you don't fit their mold of what a disabled person should look like.
Do you ever feel lonely because of that? Like I don't know other, at least people out loud as I am, about being disabled, and then like you spend your time around able-bodied people, and you're like, I feel lonely. I feel lonely often because it's like
I always say,
I don't know anybody else like me, and I can explain the pain to people, but there's no one here to be like, oh yeah, me too. I relate to it, and
I can feel lonely in a room full of people all the time.
yeah, same.
And at some point, I mean, I don't feel that way as much anymore because, like I said, at some point I stopped caring. And I don't know that necessarily is a good thing either. It was just, I got to the point where it was just too much. And sometimes I'm the type of person that'll disassociate from everything. It's like, and that's the PTSD part of it. But I
get into these disassociating spells too.
Yeah. So I'll be like, well, no feeling. And that might be part of it, but yeah, like I would be in a room with my friends and they would be like, oh, I go to the gym and I go boxing and I do this. And I'm like, yeah, good for you.
Yeah, that's great. And it's like, obviously we would never wish this on our friends and our loved ones or really anybody. My partner just went on a really great vacation and he went hiking and he did all these other things with his friends. I don't resent him for it.
Mm-hmm.
I have a hard time identifying the feeling about it, but when he was like, oh, I wish you were here, the first thought that came to mind to me was, no, you don't, because I wouldn't have been able to participate in anything that you did.
I get that. Well, it's like my husband wants me to go to the gym with him, and I really want to go, but I'm like,
right.
Like, I'm tired all the time. What I do at the studio wears me out. And I'm like, I mean, yeah, I want to be in shape again. I used to be in shape. I would love to be in shape. But my thought process is if I go to the gym and try to even get on the bike or whatever, am I going to be in bed for the next 6 days? You know what I mean? Like, I want to participate, but then I feel like such an asshole because I don't participate in the things that he wants me to participate in all the time.
I think sometimes I get jealous too, like of just people in general. Because I used to like do all these fun 5K themed things with a friend of mine before it got so bad that my legs don't work right anymore. And like I get ads for those events and like the little video plays and you see all the other runners just like bouncing around and having a good time and all. and I've identified, it took me a while to realize what that was, and it's just jealousy, because it's like, I want to do that too. I should be able to do that too, but I can't exchange the body I'm in for a new one. It's, and I feel that way about a lot of situations sometimes. And then you feel bad for being jealous about it, especially when it's like people you know. And even then, I don't really know how to work through that feeling. So I just sit there about it, and it kind of makes me sad.
I mean, jealousy is about right, because, you know, I went through this phase where it was like, well, why do I have to be sick? What did I do to deserve it? Why do I have to, you know, at 24 years old, you know, end up with fibromyalgia symptoms, and, you know, to the point where it felt like I had arthritis, and I could not, you know, do things that I could even do a couple years before or whatever, and the pain would get worse, and to the point where by the time I was like 30, I think it was like 34, my thyroid had quit. I was in so much pain, I couldn't even walk upstairs. And I gained like 50 pounds. And I'm supposed to be in the prime of my life at this point.
Yeah, that's when people are always like, oh, your 20s, that's your prime. And I'm like, when? I have never felt like I've ever been at my physical prime.
Yeah. I was.
You know?
I was at one point, because I didn't grow up with, I was actually a very healthy kid. And I think that's what made me more irritated. Me personally, more irritated, was that I used to say, but I used to be able to do that. But I could. But back when I could. And my husband was the one that was like, but you can't now. So quit comparing yourself to who you were, because you're not that. So let's concentrate on where you're at now and where you're going to be. Because even if I get better, which I'll never be where I was, I'll never be where I was. So quit trying to be where I was. Because I used to go to the gym and work out 2 hours a day and run uphill in heels. And, you know, I used to be able to do all that ridiculous stuff. I used to, you know, lift more than some of the men I knew. Like I was actually very capable. And then I stopped being capable. So
one of the things about my issues is like, because I was a perfectly healthy kid. I did all the sports. I was really good at them and everything. And then you just get worse as time goes on. And maybe someday it'll slow down or it'll get worse. It goes in waves. But mourning your former self is a very lonely process.
It's horrible. It's like a death.
Yeah. And it's like, I look back at all the things I could do, and some of them were not even that long ago. And I look at where I am now. And you're right, like knowing you can't go backwards is really, really tough.
It is. It's like you woke up one day and you became somebody completely different, but you can remember who you used to be. And it is. It's like mourning the death of yourself. And you know that even if you get better, you're never going to be that person again.
Yeah. And I keep coming back to thinking about how lonely it is, because unless somebody's been through that kind of mourning, it's a very specific one for a very niche amount of people.
It is. It's very lonely. I do know a few people in my own family who have struggled with that. And so, but even though we are close, it's still a very individual journey, and it is still very lonely, even if you're doing it together, because it is personal to that person. You know, it is personal to that person mourning who they were. Like the one person in my family who had the traumatic brain injury, they had their traumatic brain injury at 19 years old.
Oh, wow.
So they tried to live a life, had the head injury, and then ended up having a stroke by the time they were 30, I think. and their life ended. Like they didn't die, but their life ended.
No, I
Could not work
understand.
anymore. And just so the mourning period that they went through, it was tragic, but that was their journey. Even though we were a part of it, it was their personal journey because they were mourning who they were. And, I went through the same thing with me. And so, I feel like, and I, as a kid, I didn't understand their journey until I went through it myself. And that's the other thing too. Like you said, people don't understand until they go through it themselves. And I didn't understand until I went through it myself. And now I get it.
One of the things that like the whole, people tell people in their 20s, oh, you got to do this now while you have the chance to either travel, go to the concert, go places, wherever. Because I hear that because I have been in my 20s, because now I'm in my late 20s. But I feel pressured about that phrase so much more because it's like, I'm not saying I'm running out of time, but when you know that you're degenerating, like it makes that whole running out of time thing so much more real.
Yeah, because your timeline's different than other people's.
Yeah. And then that's like your timeline's different from other people in that sense. And then I know you're not supposed to like compare yourselves to others and everybody's on their own journey and everything. And that sounds real cool on paper. But when you're like watching all the other things that people get to do,
you can't help it.
Yeah, I can't help the way I feel.
Right.
And my therapist is like, it's very bad to push away those feelings. Like it's uncomfortable to sit with them. And sometimes you don't know what they're called, but you do have to sit with them. And then sometimes you sit with them for a really long time because you can't either you can't get out of it or you still can't understand it.
Exactly. Yeah. They always say what you shouldn't do, but I feel like sometimes you have to do it in order to learn not to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like you're going to do it until you don't do it.
I haven't gotten yet. I still do it, but like one day I will, probably, maybe. I don't know. I hope.
You will. I mean, it took me a while. And I'm not perfect at it yet, but it took me a while. But I think that comes with age and longevity of dealing with a problem and the support system that you have. And I apologize for all these people walking in here. People and dogs that keep coming in here. I do not have a door in my office.
It's okay.
Go ahead.
I was gonna well, no, I don't remember. Just kidding.
Words. I forget words all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it comes with time.
I don't remember what I was gonna say. Do you ever feel like I guess it's anxiety, like or pressure? Like I can be sad, but I can't be too sad. I can be sick, but I there's a limit. You can't show how sick you are at some points.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I went through a period of time where I felt guilty if I
guilty. That's one of the words I was looking for.
If I ended up showing how just sick and tired and depressed and in pain and everything that I actually was. And that if I actually showed how bad I was, then I was less than. And I think it prolonged that period of time because I wasn't letting myself just feel. But yeah, there was a lot of guilt and shame that was attached to that. And I couldn't get out of bed for a while. Because it was like the ones, like if I just said I was tired, that for some reason that was just easier than to say what was really going on,
Yeah.
which actually looked worse. Mom's not getting out of bed, you know, until 1 o'clock in the afternoon because she's tired. You know?
Sometimes I feel like I have to water myself or water my symptoms down. Like I'll say, wow, my chest kind of hurts. And it's because my heart's racing at like a million miles an hour and my ribs have dislocated off my spine and I can't breathe. No, my chest just hurts. We can keep hanging out. It's all good.
Yeah.
I don't like to admit sometimes that my own body has ruined the situation for me for the rest of the day.
That actually happened to me recently when I was in Dallas. And the only thing I said too was my chest hurts. I have heart palpitations. Because that's my go-to.
Yep.
Not that I wasn't having heart palpitations, but that wasn't the only thing.
Yeah, it's easier to be like, yeah, my head hurts, my chest hurts, my knees are sore today. Not like my bones are falling apart and there's no cartilage in between them to help out. So
that's even like when I'm having a bad PTSD day. I usually just say I'm tired. That's my go-to is I'm tired. Because trying to explain the overthinking, the nightmares, the whatever that I've had that's been going on that day, the fact that all I want to do is scream, you know, I just say I'm tired. I water down those symptoms quite often. But it is easier to do that. And I think it's because trying to explain it.
Sometimes I just like space out, like I'm just physically in the room, mentally not there. And somebody will bring it back to my attention and they're like, what were you thinking about? And I go, nothing. But it really is just in my head. But nothing sounds a lot better than, I was just like internally screaming into a void because just all of it. And then sometimes it gets so bad that it's like, I don't even know why I was like that. It just hits you.
Oh yeah. A lot of times that happens when I'm laying in bed at the end of the day and I'm like, I can't scream because I'll wake my husband up. But that's what I want to do. Or when people are talking and I start to zone out, it's because I'm just like, I don't have the brain capacity for this right now. You know what I mean? Like if there's too much, if I'm in a room with too many people or whatever's going on and I'm like, I don't have the great brain capacity and I'll do that. I'll just kind of shut down. And that's kind of where I'm at. I'm like imagining myself in the middle of a field, just screaming at the top of my lungs.
Yeah.
Because it's the only way I know how to not do it for real.
That's a very good way to describe it. Yeah.
Yeah. Or just tell everybody to shut up.
Yeah.
All the voices in my head. No, I'm just kidding. But so I know there are other aspects of your life that this affects. Did you want to get into that? Like, we don't have to.
No, can you give me a jumping point? Because I know I gave you examples, but I'm really forgetful.
Like stuff we did in the studio. Like, does it affect your? And we can cut this off if you decide not to. But your modeling.
No, I just can't. I just couldn't remember what you were talking
about. That's okay. This affects your modeling too, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does because modeling's hard. I don't think people realize how hard that is to make yourself look real natural on camera, but you're like holding these I leave the studios like sore. Like I don't shoot back-to-back days because I can't. One of the poses that people always ask me to do, they're like, oh, can you like normal people like cross your legs? I can't because my hips lock out. Or if the studio is too hot and I start aggressively sweating because I can't temperature regulate, or the studio is too cold and I'm just shivering like a wet dog. And then it's like a mess. And then other models don't do that. And then they're like, could you please get your act together? No. Um, I think, and that's one of those things, like, I want to be open about my disability, but like, I feel like sometimes that takes work away from me. Because once photographers or whoever's hiring me finds out, they're like, she comes with health issues. We'll pick the next one.
Mhm.
I also think that, sometimes the camera flashes. They're like, look, they're like, because you find the light for everything. And the light is just blinding because your eyes are also in poor condition with Ehlers-Danlos. And then you've been blinded for the rest of the shoot. And then you get that headache, the pressure headache.
Mm.
And then sometimes, like, I love creating art and modeling and everything. But if it's like one of those shoots with like rough conditions, I always feel bad about having to tap out earlier than everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like with me, I've learned to shoot what I need to shoot in a specific amount of time because I can't do 6-7 hour shoots like a lot of people. It's too much on my body. I can barely do what I do without feeling pain.
Yeah.
Especially with me getting down on the floor and shooting people.
Yeah.
It's too much. But like you, I love what I do. And I don't know that I could go without it because that's a creative outlet.
I love the creative outlet of things. And then I don't know if this sounds bad or not. I like that I can look at the pictures on my bad days and be like, look at myself and be like, well, I don't look sick here. That's a pretty good photo.
No, I don't think that's bad at all because it gives you a glimpse of what could be.
Yeah, that's a very good way of wording it. Not like just in general, but like,
or
some
what
days
was for a moment.
yeah, or sometimes it's a nice thing to look at. It's like, well, I am currently on the floor because I just woke up from passing out. But that photo of me on the wall, I didn't pass out that day. So
Exactly.
we can always try again tomorrow. And I know that's a very weird thought process, but
It's not. You have to look at the positives, especially when you're having those bad days.
yeah.
Because, like I said, there are days where I can't go anywhere. And then I kind of do the same thing.
Do you ever feel like being disabled and chronically sick, it feels scary sometimes? Like, it's like, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like it's scary because I'll wake up in the morning perfectly fine, but those dizzy spells hit quick. And while I don't pass out often, sometimes it's pretty bad. And I also live alone. So,
see, that would
I
be
never
scary.
know what kind of day I'm going to have or if I'm going to end up in the ER today. And sometimes that makes me scared.
When I was at my sickest, before they were able to maintain the adrenal disorder, I was terrified because I didn't at one point know what it was. And 2, I was living alone with 3 children. And I was scared because there was a couple times where I passed out and my daughter, she was 6 or 7. She had to open up cans of green beans and raviolis and feed the other 2 because I had blacked out. And so, yeah, terrifying. Now that I know what's wrong, I'm not as sick as I was because they're maintaining it. Now that everybody knows what it is, I'm on the medication that I need to be on. So I'm not blacking out like I was. I'm not convulsing like I was. I'm on a medication that I always say I'm always in pain, but before the medication, it was like a sharp knife. After the medication, it's like they took the tip off the knife. So I'm always in pain, but it's not excruciating, if that makes sense. So I can function.
I'm going to start using that. That's like a very good way to describe that. Like, because I try to explain people when they're like, but you got meds and you're like sort of in treatment. Aren't you better now? And I'm like, I mean, it's not as bad, but I'm not going to say that we've gotten to good yet. I don't.
Right. I mean, I'm out of bed and I'm functioning, if you want to call it functioning, compared to where I used to be. But when they did the one test, I used 9% of normal energy. What I only have 9%, like a fraction of what everybody else has for energy. And the stuff that I do, and everybody's like, oh, where do you find the time or the motivation to do all this stuff? What people don't see is when I'm flat on my face or I'm crying because I'm so tired because I'm trying to do the things that I want to do. I'm trying to make up for lost time when I took 5 years off because I couldn't function. And as stupid as that sounds, the 5 years I took off, I had to start teaching everybody who Eva Seraphine was again. Because 5 years off in the photography world is like starting over.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Nobody knows who I am, even though I started here in 2012. So I'm trying to play catch up. I'm turning 45 this year. This is not the time to start a photography business. Most people are, well into their career. But I'm at a point now where I'm not as sick as I was because I'm on the proper meds. Trying to explain that to somebody though is a pain in the butt because they're like, "Oh, well, you're better."
Yeah, because to people, they're like, you're sick or you're better. You got one or the other. It's a sliding scale from day to day.
Right. Today I might be great. And that's why I hate planning things too, because people are like, well, let's do something on Wednesday. And I'm like, yeah, but I might feel like complete utter shit on Wednesday.
Someone recently asked me what I was doing next month. And I was like, I don't know what condition I'm going to be in tonight. Right. So why am I supposed to be that worried? Like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing next month.
Exactly.
And I don't know what I'm going to be able to do next month. Like,
right. You could be great. You could literally have to cancel. There's been times where I've had to cancel because I've scheduled so far in advance. And at the time I was like, well, might as well. I don't know. And then that week I couldn't get out of bed and I have no idea why.
I've had to cancel on photographers before, and I always feel really bad about it because you don't want to be labeled as the she flakes a lot. Like,
right.
Photographers say that about every other model, but like I will try. I like to wait, and I don't know if this is good or bad. I'll like wait out my symptoms and be like, I don't know, I could be fine in an hour. Like, let's wait. And then I get worse. And I'm like, I have to message a photographer or call them and be like, hey, so I thought I was going to get better and I was wrong. So I need to reschedule. And I know how that looks to people who don't understand chronic illness and being sick. And then it gives me anxiety of like, well, there goes that opportunity forever. And now they're going to tell everybody else.
I've been there. I usually wait till the night before because I don't know.
I hold on to the hope that I'll get better. Don't know that, but I remain hopeful.
And there have been times where I've canceled the night before. I've woken up the next day and I'm fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you're like, why'd I do that? Oh, I shouldn't have done that.
But then I'm like, well, you know what? That was my body telling me I needed today off anyway. So I try to roll with it. Like, there's a reason for everything.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to stuff like that. Because if I was fine and then my body reacts like that and then I'm fine again, I'm like, nope, my body was telling me I need a break or something. I don't know. At winter time is usually the worst for me anyway.
Winter has been awful because just for a million reasons. My skin is always dry and your skin is connective tissue. So it always hurts because I don't have very good connective tissue. And like the barometric pressure in the air changes and everything. I feel it in every bone, and I don't want to leave my house. Winter is rough.
Yeah.
It's harder to breathe in the winter.
I was gonna say, once spring hits, I'm like, okay, I feel like a somewhat normal person or normal for me.
I like fall the best because it's not too hot and it's not too cold, so I'm not sweating to death or freezing to death. And it's just more peaceful. It's a peaceful time to be sick, the fall.
Yeah.
Or at least for me it is.
I'm usually good with like late spring, early fall, like right before summer, because cold and I do not get along. Like right now, even just the joints in my fingers from holding my camera, it hurts. So I like it when it's not too hot, but warm enough that my hands and everything want to work. And the studio's been cold because the heat's not, I gotta figure out the heat, but I'm like shivering while I'm trying to shoot, and it's not good. I get home and I'm like, okay, my husband bought me a heating blanket and I'll just go lay under it after. I'm just like, okay, just so I can start to not feel pain. Half the time, that's what it is.
I love my little heating pad that I keep by my bed because I can't fluctuate my own body to. I call it the lizard pad because you know how lizards like to hang out on heat rocks?
Yep.
Is that.
Yeah. So. All right. Well, we have been talking for an hour. So.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I just looked up at the time thing.
Yep. So. And I know as much as we could keep talking, people usually get bored if they're listening more than an hour. So, but I do think that we did talk about some really important stuff.
Definitely.
And I know there are people out there that do feel the same, that struggle. Like you said, it's a very lonely road. And there are a lot of people out there that are going through the same thing. So
yeah,
thank you very much for taking the time to talk about it, because
I'm glad that I got to talk to you about it. And like I told you, I'm so particular about who I talk to about it, but I'm so glad that it was you. And finding the community, the support system is so important. So I'm glad that we both know that they are out there. And I hope that other sick people know that there's a community out there too.
Absolutely. And that's the main reason why I wanted to do this too, is, there are so many people that are struggling with so many different things where they feel so alone. And they're so not.
Yeah.
So, but thank you for taking the time out to do this with me today, and have a great rest of your afternoon.
You too. Bye.
All right. Bye. See ya.